People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
I do not stand by in the presence of evil.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
The word socialist. I want to get right to this because I want to help your campaign. I want to see you get the nomination. We have to we have to teach Americans what this is.
We do.
And I don't know if we're doing that yet.
Okay.
I don't think most Americans realize they're already socialist.
Let's start off with what it is not what we want to change. We want to deal with the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality in America.
Socialism. This is my big thing tonight, to get you to undemonize this word.
I believe that health care should be a right of all people.
Okay, but you want to increase Social Security.
Yes, and you know how we do that? We pay for it.
Right.
We say that somebody who's making $10 million should not end up paying the same amount as somebody making $118,000. Lift the cap.
Okay.
We can extend and expand Social Security.
Okay. You also want free college.
That's right. Well, stop one. We do not free college. Free public college.
Right.
Free tuition in public colleges and universities. You know how we pay for that? Through a tax on Wall Street speculation.
Okay. Child care.
Yep.
Child care.
Yes.
And single payer.
Now, single payer is more cost effective than what we have right now. In terms of child care, in terms of rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure and creating millions of decent paying jobs, we do away with these huge tax loopholes that corporations and the wealthy enjoy.
So you're saying we can pay for all this without raising taxes on anybody but the 1%?
May have to go down a little bit lower than that, but not much lower.
Yeah, he is a socialist Democrat. Now let me explain what that is. He's a Democrat.
We have to say yes to socialism, to the word and everything.
Definition of socialism. Any of various economic and political theories advocating collective, or governmental ownership, and administration of the means of production and distribution of goods. A system of society or group living in which there is no private property. A system or condition of society in which the means of production are owned and controlled by the state.
The year was 1938. Austria was in a very, very deep depression. We had more than 30% unemployment. We had 25% inflation. And if you borrowed money from the bank, you paid 25% interest. That's why farmers were going broke. Businesses were going broke. They could not pay their mortgage or they could not pay their taxes. What was even worse, we had riots in our cities. We had whole blocks of the cities burned down, and our law enforcement was almost helpless. They could not control the riots. The unions were calling for strikes, and industry would close, and factories would close up, hence all this unemployment. There were no jobs. There were young people, college graduates, no jobs. The media still claims that Hitler rolled into Austria with tanks and guns and took us over. Not true at all. The fact is that the Austrian people elected Hitler by 98% of the vote by means of the ballot box. Now, how could that happen in a Christian nation, almost 100% Catholic, that they would elect a monster like Hitler? Hitler did not look like a monster. He did not act like a monster. He talked like an American politician. The media told us that in Germany, where Hitler ruled since 1933, they had full employment, They had a high living standard, and everybody was driving the little beetle car, the Volkswagen. We did not hear a whisper that anybody was being persecuted or arrested. We only heard good things. And of course, we spoke the same language. We spoke German. We had the same culture. There was only a border between us, Austria and Germany, like South and North Dakota. And we said, why not? We would like to have the same high living standard what Germany had, and of all the things, jobs. People wanted to work. The Austrian people petitioned the government for a plebiscite, for an election. And hence, the Austrian people elected Hitler by 98% of the vote. So we got a new government, National Socialism. I translate for you, Nationalsozialismus, from the word national, the word Nazi derived. So we were getting a Nazi government. Nobody was elected anymore from the school board, the city commission, the county commission, legislature, and governors. They were all appointed. Well, we thought they would only pick the very best people to govern us. Just like in Germany, we trusted them. We did not ask questions. So the first thing what happened, we had to carry national ID cards. You could not board a bus, you could not board a train without showing your national ID card. Don't ever let that happen here. Very bad idea. The next thing what happened, Hitler gave us free radios. So we could listen to him. He was a great orator. And then he nationalized the radio station.
Definition of nationalize. Transfer a major branch of industry or commerce, from private to state ownership or control. Definition of nationalism. Loyalty and devotion to a nation. A sense of national consciousness exalting one nation above all others and placing primary emphasis on promotion of its culture and interests as opposed to those of other nations or supranational groups. In other words, take care of home first.
And we were warned if we would turn on a foreign radio station like British Broadcasting or Switzerland, death penalty. Nobody turned on a foreign radio station because you know what the death penalty meant. So the newspaper, before it hit the street, it was being censored by the government. So the only voice what we had was the government radio station and the government-controlled newspaper.
Propaganda did not go away after World War II. In fact, there's probably more and more propaganda today.
1928, the Nazi Party only had 12 seats in the German parliament out of almost 600. But 1930 gets 107 seats. Then 1932, it more than doubles that. They learned how to simplify a message, how to play upon voters' emotions, how to reduce very complicated issues to slogans. The Nazis saw the importance of controlling the media, this Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda. It was created as a cabinet-level post for Joseph Goebbels, who also was in charge of the Nazi Party's propaganda apparatus.
So in the state, this means newsreels, films, books, radio, library.
It was an OSS memo, the precursor of the CIA, where they were doing a study of the use of motion pictures in America as a means of psychological warfare. So it goes all the way back to pre-1947, when U.S. intelligence was using motion pictures to alter the thinking of Americans in the United States.
The morale of our troops is high. the laughter, music, and general entertainment which comes out of a single small package like this one have helped to build that morale.
The CIA is funneling information into Hollywood. Hollywood is putting out in the movies, and the population believes it.
Taxes to bury the Axis.
This document right here is a FOIA document. Anybody in America, anybody can request this. It's Freedom of Information Act. And in the 40s, they were telling you they controlled the radio stations. They controlled most of the mainstream media. They're telling you right here that motion pictures are used as psychological warfare. Why would they stop doing it?
At no time has the CIA engaged in any political activity or any intelligence activity that was not approved at the highest level.
There's no question about the fact that Mockingbird is real. It started out paying journalists in major media, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, to print fake stories that the CIA wanted in the press and fake interviews. And this was revealed in the Church Committee.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal? We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
And of course, then the CIA destroyed the rest of the files, which is what they do. George H.W. Bush came out and finally made the statement about Mockingbird. Well, we're going to officially stop the Mockingbird program. The CIA will no longer pay journalists to write stories. From now on, the program is voluntary, which means Mockingbird continues today. When's the last time you've seen a mainstream media outlet do a serious investigative report on the actions of the CIA? There's a reason for that.
This would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. And we're looking at that very carefully. You say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
Platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Operation Paperclip, and this is something people need to know because it has been so covered up and mocked and berated and claimed to be a conspiracy theory. And by the way, the term labeling people as conspiracy theorists was invented by the CIA to deflect any attention over the JFK assassination. They invented that word as a way to shut down any scrutiny or just critical investigation of what they were doing. So they started that whole ball rolling. In terms of Operation Paperclip, it is documented. There's absolutely no question about it. Allen Dulles, CIA director, was an associate of Heinrich Himmler of the Third Reich. So what Dulles proceeded to do when the Third Reich was brought down was he secretly brought all of the top Nazi scientists into the U.S. He falsified their files that he gave to Harry Truman, making them look like there were no war crimes. They brought these Nazi scientists into the CIA to work for the CIA, and that includes the human experiments they conducted on Jewish men, women, and children, and the psychological studies that these Nazi scientists had done. The CIA was using their expertise for these programs through Operation Paperclip, and this was Nazi, much of it occult beliefs that the CIA adopted and actually put these people on their payroll.
One of the programs that came out of Operation Paperclip was MKUltra. Now, MKUltra was a very complex program that dealt with human experiments and mind manipulation.
As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will. and even against such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation.
In the church committee, MK Ultra came out as an actual program of mind control using mental, physical, and sexual abuse and psychotropic drugs.
So, a lot of new things happened very quick. Hitler gave us equal rights. Oh, that sounded so very good. Equal rights for everybody. Also, everybody was getting a guaranteed income from the government.
We will not rest until every person in this country is paid a living wage.
The equal rights, here we call it the Equal Rights Amendment.
This is an historic day, a happy day, as the House takes action to move our nation closer to our founding ideal that all are created equal. It is a shameful reality that the Equal Rights Amendment still has not been enshrined in the Constitution. And as a result, millions of American women still face inequality under the law and injustice in their careers and lives. It's not just about women, it's about America. The ERA will strengthen America, unleashing the full power of women in our economy and upholding the value of equality in our democracy.
Equal rights was designed in two components: equality, economics, and social. Economics, that was designed to equalize the country's wealth, because everybody was entitled to a guaranteed equal income. In order to achieve that, they had to raise our taxes up to 70% to equalize the wealth. Those who were on the lower income level, to graduate them up there to an equal level. They got subsidized housing, they got food stamps, they got heating fuel, and they got a certain amount of payment from the government for each child. So they equalized the country's wealth by taxing us 70% to bring that level, the lower income level, into an equal level, and that is called socialism.
But you said you would have to raise taxes on the middle class, Senator.
Yeah, raise taxes on the middle class.
Would you support a carbon tax? Some other candidates say they would.
Yeah, no, I would. Yes to a carbon tax. We would institute a carbon pollution fee.
We need a climate adjustment fee.
Pay a robot tax.
By eliminating just a few of the tax cuts, I'm going to eliminate mostly all of them, but a few of the tax cuts, no, you think I'm joking, I'm not.
A lot of people in this country would be delighted to pay more in taxes.
Well, I think that part of the answer is that we're going to have to raise taxes.
On day one, we're going to repeal that tax bill.
We're going to begin by repealing and replacing the Trump tax cuts.
The first thing I would do as president was eliminate the president's tax cut.
We need to repeal that tax bill. And also looking at estate taxes are going to have to go up.
That's why we need to do a carbon tax and dividend.
So I don't see a way we're ever going to solve this problem without some way putting a price on carbon.
People, yes, we're supposed to be for a 70% tax rate.
On the social level, of course, under socialism, everybody has to be in the workforce. Before Hitler, of course, the moms stayed home, they were good wives, and they raised their families. But under socialism, if you are not in the workforce, you are called a parasite. So the moms were being put out into the workforce. So what happened to the children? Child care centers. You could, and it was all free for everybody. You could bring your 4-month-old baby, leave it there 24 hours, 7 days a week. As longer you left your child there, the better the government liked it. The staffers of the child care centers. They were not the grandmotherly type of women who took care of the children. They were young women, highly skilled in child psychology, to mold the little babies from 4 weeks on up how the government wanted them. The government raised our children. So that was the equality, equal rights for everybody. The next thing what happened, education was nationalized. We had a very good educational system in Austria before Hitler. I went to public school. We had a very good curriculum. We even prayed in public school before class and after class. That morning, after the election, I walked into my classroom and the crucifix was gone. And the teacher said, this morning, we greet each other, Heil Hitler. And she said, we don't pray anymore. We sing Deutschland, Deutschland über alles. Germany above everybody. And she also said we would not have twice a week religious education anymore either. We would have physical education instead. Oh, we did not mind that. It was a lot more fun to play ball than study the Bible or learn long prayers. She also said that on Sunday we could not go to church anymore because Sunday was compulsory National Youth Day. We had to attend at 8 o'clock in the morning to the gymnasium instead of going to church. The first 2 hours we had political education. Today I would call it political indoctrination. We were being told not to listen to our parents. They were just old-fashioned old fogies. They did not understand the young people. Only Hitler did. So don't listen to your parents anymore. And besides, you had freedom and you had rights. So our parents could not tell us anymore when to come home at night. We could decide that for ourselves. The rest of the day we had sports. We got all the sports equipment free. We got tennis rackets, we got skis, everything. And the boys of age 16, they got motorcycles. And of course, everybody had to join the Hitler Youth. That was compulsory. So the rest of the day we had sports and fun. So when we returned home at night, we told our parents how much fun we had and how much better it was, and all the sports equipment we got free, much more fun than going to church. Well, my parents were very concerned, especially my mother. So when my next school term came about in October, she announced that she would enroll me in a private school with an excellent curriculum, but not much fun. But she was a wise woman. She said, today you do not understand why I'm doing this for you. But when you grow up a bit, you will understand. Had my mother not intervened, today I would be a radical Marxist. Hitler also nationalized our car industry. Austria built a little car, a little bit bigger than a Fiat. Hitler said, we don't need another little car, we already have the Beetle car, the Volkswagen. So he turned the car industry into a defense industry. Also, Hitler nationalized our banks. Hitler said, those greedy banks, they were the ones who charged 25% interest. And that is why the farmers were going broke and the businesses were going broke. And he looted the Jewish banks. So our banks were being nationalized. Next thing, what happened, he nationalized our healthcare system.
I spent 1.5 years getting healthcare passed. I had to take that issue across the country, and I paid significant political costs to get it done. The notion that I'm going to let you guys undo that.
Well, the Affordable Care Act appears to be tottering right on the edge of oblivion. 20% of Americans have only one insurance option to choose from on Obamacare exchanges. Premiums on those exchanges rose to an average of 25% in just the last year. And now the Trump administration and the Republican Congress seem poised to kill the law completely. Professor Jonathan Gruber helped craft both Obamacare and its predecessor under Governor Romney in Massachusetts. He maintains the law is working as intended.
We just tax the insurance companies. They pass it on higher prices. That offsets the tax break we get. It ends up being the same thing. It's a very clever, basic exploitation of the lack of economic understanding of the American voter.
That health care, in my view, is a human right. Yes, they will pay more in taxes.
So I'm a strong advocate for Medicare for all. We are going to take on the healthcare industry.
The president spent a lot of time on using the S word. Socialism and socialist. It was a not too subtle, I don't know whether it's a dig or a enhancement. I'll let you decide.
I was flattered.
Okay, fair enough.
When we, have this discussion about going back or reopening, I think a lot of people should just say, no, we're not going back to that.
We had a reasonable good healthcare system, which was financed by private insurance. We had good hospitals, we had good doctors, and everybody was reasonably well being cared for. This all changed very fast. My brother-in-law, who was a family physician, he told me that when he arrived at his office at 8 o'clock in the morning, 40 patients would be lined up waiting for him to be cared for. He said it was like practicing medicine on a conveyor belt. He only had time, 5 or 10 minutes per patient, and besides all the paperwork, it was a system from well taken care health care to a very, very bad system. And what was even worse, he told me that naturally all the doctors were being salaried by the government. There was no more free market. Free market did not exist anymore. The government salaried all the doctors. So my brother-in-law was a very conscientious doctor. He would only prescribe medication what the patient really needed. But if that medication was not on the government's list, they took it out of his salary, and his salary dwindled down to almost nothing. So a lot of doctors left the country. A lot of doctors left, including my own husband. My husband did not want to practice medicine like his brother had to. He wanted free market medicine. He came to this country, and I remember telling me how wonderful our healthcare system was, how modern our hospitals were compared what he left behind. He said, I hope it will never change. Today, he will turn over in his grave how healthcare will change. Also, of course, under a socialist government, you have a lot of rules and regulation. We had a planning agency that was designed to control the businesses and the farmers. The bureaucrats, oh, we had tons of bureaucrats. That's how Hitler created jobs, government jobs. A lot of bureaucrats. And they would go out on the farms and count the livestock and tell the farmers what to plant, how much to plant, and how much they had to harvest, regardless of the weather. They would go into the businesses and snoop around what they could find under the auspices of health and safety. Here we call it OSHA. They were nitpicking everybody. And I hear that a lot of time from my audiences, how the bureaucrats come into their business and snoop around what they can criticize and what the business owner had to replace. And that's why a lot of businesses in Austria could not afford replacement, whether it was round tables versus square tables and more bathrooms. So a lot of businesses closed their doors. Also, the bureaucrats would go out on the farms and count the chickens and order the chickens how many eggs they had to lay. That's right. Ridiculous what really happened in education. When the time came to pick your major in college, I wanted to be a journalist and writer. I was told they didn't need journalists, they did not need writers either. They needed young teachers. So I had to go into education. I did not mind that because I like children. So in my last year in college, I was sent to a small village in the mountains, and I was told that because in the wintertime, the mountain passes would close up because of the masses of snow. So people in that village, they intermarry family into family. And we know by genetics that sometime the offspring, the baby, is a bit mentally handicapped. So when I arrived in that village, I was told they had about 15 of mentally handicapped people. One man I know very well, he was the janitor in our school, Vincent. He could not read or write. He could not talk very well, but he kept our school clean. So one morning, I looked out of my classroom window, and there was a van out there from the health department. I thought, well, and all these people were being ushered into the van. And so I asked my principal, where are they going to take Vincent and all the rest of the people? I thought maybe they take him for an outing, for a picnic. The principal said, oh no, the health department came around and asked the parents if they want to institutionalize their son or daughter to learn how to read and write. Gladly the parents signed the papers and off they went. 6 months later, the letters came to the parents that their son or daughter died a natural but merciful death. The news traveled very fast in that village. People said, well, they all left in excellent health, in good health. And why should they all die within 6 months? It dawned on the villagers that they were being euthanized. After the war, I found out that 20,000 children, handicapped children, were being euthanized. On a personal note, God forbid should I ever become handicapped. I will never apply for a handicapped license plate because I don't want to get on the list.
Amen.
And I know that under Obama's health care, we have eugenics. And that means those of us who are getting old, like me, I'm 87 years old, there is no more money for us. So that was euthanasia. We also had a federal police force, secret police, commonly known as the Gestapo, and they were everywhere in civilian clothes. You didn't know who they were. People disappeared all the time, and nobody knew where people were being taken. Nobody knew, but people disappeared. And the Gestapo, they watched everybody, everybody's coming and goings, because we had national ID cards, and of course you could not board a bus or a train without showing your national ID card. They keep track on us, and we were being so scared. The most scared of everything we were of the Gestapo, the secret police. This is how it worked. Since the war was going on, all our food was being rationed. We got 1 pound of sugar a month. So if somebody in your family passed away like grandma, you quickly took that coveted sugar coupon and went to the grocery store and bought that pound of sugar. The next day, the Gestapo would knock on your door and say, we know that you did not turn in the sugar coupon. You bought that pound of sugar, but I am not going to arrest you. But you have to inform on your boss, your neighbor, your friend, everybody you know, and report to our office once a week. They created a network of informers. We could not trust our neighbors. We could not trust our friends. We couldn't trust anybody. We couldn't trust the mailman. Nobody. We were afraid to talk to anybody, anything political, because we did not know who was informing on everybody. A network of informers they created. I believe it was in February '09. I'm a lobbyist in our capital in South Dakota. And that morning I drove to our capital about around 8 o'clock. And I had the car radio on, and the news was being reported. And there was President Obama saying, if you hear anybody criticizing me, call the White House.
Yep.
When I arrived in the Capitol, I quickly went to ask to verify. I asked some of the legislators if they heard the same story, and they said, yes, we also heard that. Can you imagine creating a network of informers, informing and call the White House? Yes, it's happening. We also had gun control. The government said that children were playing with guns, and we had hunting accidents, people accidentally shooting each other, and we had criminals again, murderers.
You say that the U.S. government ought to ban a certain species of rifle. You wrote a piece about this. This is not a secret view you have. You wrote it in USA Today, and you say this: we should ban possession of military-style semi-automatic assault weapons. We should buy back such weapons from all who choose to abide by the law, and we should criminally prosecute any who choose to defy it by keeping their weapons. So we should confiscate this entire class of firearms. What do you think would happen if the federal government tried to do that?
Well, Tucker, did you read the op-ed?
I did. I just quoted from it extensively.
Yeah, I'm not calling for a confiscation. What I'm saying is we should invest in a buyback, that we should restrict any weapons that aren't bought back to gun clubs, hunting clubs, shooting ranges, keep them there where it's safe and not on our streets. And if you were caught, just like if you were caught, you know, with drugs or anything else, if they had probable cause to go into your home and you had one of these weapons, yeah, you'd be prosecuted.
So you're going to prosecute people who don't give up their weapons. That's gun confiscation.
If they're caught with them, yeah. We're not sending troops.
They're caught with
we're not sending troops door to door.
So, but what do you think? What do you think would happen? I mean, do you think, because of course the overwhelming majority of those people are law-abiding, have committed no crime, have no plans to commit a crime. You would instantly turn them into felons. Would an assault weapons ban prevent future shootings? That's the key question, and luckily we don't need to guess about the answer. We already had an assault weapons ban in this country for 10 years, starting in 1994. Now, that law, when it was written, mandated a comprehensive study of its effectiveness, which was produced, so we have a definitive answer. According to the Justice Department, our assault weapons ban, the one that passed in 1994, had no effect on crime rates. None. Nobody was saved by it.
The only way that they could track the murderer was by the serial number of the gun. So bring your gun to the police station, then we can register the serial number and we can track the criminal. And we thought that was a good idea. So gladly we did that. Not long afterwards, they said no, it did not help. We could not track all the criminals. The best way to have no more crimes and no more people getting hurt, bring your guns to the police station. They already know who had guns because we registered our guns. Keep your guns and buy more guns and stack up on your ammo. A gun is no good if you don't have any ammo. Dictatorship did not happen overnight. It took 5 years, from 1938 until 1943, we had a full-blown dictatorship. Had we kept our guns, we would have fought a bloody battle to the last man and women to keep our freedom. But we had no guns. A classic example is, in Switzerland, it is law that everybody has to have a gun. And Hitler took every country in Europe except Switzerland. And Switzerland did not have a war for more than 600 years. Hitler never tackled Switzerland. So keep your guns. Keep your guns. Like I said, the only information what we had, what the government provided for us, the nationalized radio station and the censored newspaper, nobody could come in and nobody could get out. We had no information, none whatsoever. We did not know that we had concentration camps. We found that out after the Americans and the Allies liberated us, that we had concentration camps, and we were shocked. We were totally shocked. When the people fear the government, that's tyranny. But when the government fears the people, that's liberty. We have to take our country back as we know it. And a good way is that we educate our friends, everybody. I have my speech on a DVD. I urge you to have house parties, play my DVD, invite your neighbors, your friends, and educate them on socialism. We are almost 80% there. We have to take our country back as we know it. Those of us who sailed past the Statue of Liberty, we came to a country of unbelievable freedom and opportunity. America is the greatest country in the world. Amen. If we can keep it.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
I do not stand by in the presence of evil.
We have an army of digital soldiers.